Chosen one, this message didn't arrive by chance. It was time to reach you in this exact moment. You may not have understood why certain roads felt blocked, why doors slammed in your face, or why the silence around you grew so heavy. But the truth is, something unseen has aligned to bring you here, because your soul remembers something they hoped you would forget. This isn't for everyone. If your eyes found this, it's because your soul has been marked for something most people will never understand. They may have tried to bury your fire under years of doubt, delay, and distraction, but what was placed in you cannot be extinguished. What if I told you the very battles you thought were meant to break you were actually forging you? What if the very people who underestimated you were unknowingly confirming your destiny? There are forces that never wanted you to see this moment, because it marks the beginning of your return. If this message already speaks to your soul, subscribe, like this video, and comment 77 below. They hid the truth because they feared what would happen the day you remembered. That day has arrived, and by the end of this video, you will see why they were right to be afraid. Number 1. The silence was the forge. They thought the seasons of delay meant defeat. They whispered that your stillness was proof you had nothing left to offer. But heaven knew the silence was a forge, and you were the steel being tempered. Every unanswered prayer was a hammer strike. Every closed door was heat applied to strengthen you. You see, they wanted to measure you by movement, by visible success, by noise. But the God who called you measures differently. He saw the battles fought behind your eyes, the faith you held when no one clapped, the nights you chose to stay standing when collapse would have been easier. In 1 Peter 1 verse 7, it says that your faith, of greater worth than gold, is refined by fire so it may result in praise, glory, and honor. That's why they couldn't see the real work happening in you. The forge is not for public viewing. It is for private transformation. Comment forged if you know the silence has been shaping you. Because once you realize the stillness was never emptiness, only preparation, you start to see the outline of the next weapon forming in your hand. And that's when we move to the fire they couldn't kill. A dream drifts into your memory. You are standing in a dim workshop, light spilling through a single high window, dust floating like tiny stars in the beam. The air smells of iron and fire, though no flames are visible. Somewhere beyond sight, a hammer strikes metal in a slow, deliberate rhythm. You feel that the sound is not just around you but inside you, shaping something in the quiet of your soul. This is where the silence you feared was emptiness has been leading you. You realize you have been here before, not in body, but in the secret chambers of your spirit. In that moment, you understand that what seemed like delay was the exact environment your destiny required to be born. There were seasons you sat among people and felt you were watching life through glass, present but somehow apart. You smiled when expected, spoke when called upon, but inside there was an ache you could not name. You saw patterns others missed, a shift in tone, a hesitation in a friend's eyes, the unspoken meaning in a room's atmosphere. Yet, instead of feeling gifted, you wondered if you were simply too sensitive for this world. Days blurred into months, and months into years, with no grand proof that your life was moving toward anything sacred. You carried this quiet weight, unsure if it was a blessing or a burden. And still, somewhere deep, you hoped that one day the pieces would make sense. Now you begin to see that none of those moments were accidents. The strange distance you felt was not a flaw but a vantage point. Like a watchman set on a high wall, you were positioned to see from angles others could not. In the book of Habakkuk, the prophet says, "I will stand at my watch and station myself on the ramparts. I will look to see what he will say to me." That posture, waiting, watching, listening, was your hidden training. Every instance of isolation, every season of obscurity, was an intentional placement by hands far wiser than yours. What felt like absence was in truth the architecture of a calling being assembled around you. The signs of this hidden work began subtly. You noticed that certain days carried a strange familiarity, as though you were reliving a moment you had never lived before. Dreams came with symbols you didn't understand but could not forget. A door you never entered, a river you never crossed, a name that returned again and again. Sometimes your body spoke before your mind could. A sudden stillness, a sharp breath, a sense that the air had shifted. In those moments, you dismissed them as coincidence, but now you realize they were sparks escaping from the forge. Heaven was letting you glimpse the work, not so you would rush it, but so you would trust it. You've been right all along, though you doubted yourself. That inner resistance when pressured to move before the time was not fear. It was discernment. The pull to step away from noise and chaos was not weakness. It was preservation. Like the slow growth of a tree whose roots deepen before its branches rise, your strength was developing beneath the surface. It did not announce itself in grand gestures, but in the quiet refusal to abandon what you knew was true. That quietness is not emptiness, it is alignment. And in that alignment, you have been carried through storms you didn't even realize were passing overhead. To remember who you are is not to invent a new self. It is to brush away the dust and reveal what was always there. You have been buried under layers of expectation, misunderstanding, and the weight of other people's voices. Beneath it all is the original design, the blueprint of one who was chosen before the world learned your name. The forge has been clearing away what could not withstand the heat, revealing the shape of a vessel that will carry more than you thought possible. This is not the beginning of you becoming. It is the beginning of you remembering. And that memory is more than personal, it is eternal. You can feel the first stirrings of this truth settling into your bones. The same sensitivity you once saw as weakness now feels like a compass pointing true north. The hunger for meaning that once kept you restless now fuels your steps. You understand that the silence was never a prison. It was a sanctuary where your soul learned the language of heaven. You are not emerging as someone untested, but as one who has already walked through fire unseen. The slow pace was not a punishment, it was a perfecting. And now, as you take each deliberate step forward, you know you carry something the world cannot easily shake. If you are hearing this now, it is not by coincidence but by design. The silence was the forge, and you were the steel. Every unanswered prayer, every closed door, every lonely night was a hammer shaping you for this hour. Comment "forged" if you feel the truth of this in your spirit, and let the act be your first acknowledgement of what has been happening all along. Because once you see the stillness as preparation, you will recognize the weapon forming in your hand. And that is when the next revelation begins, the one they never wanted you to survive long enough to hear. What we do here every day is possible because of the few who choose to be keepers of this light. I thank them now, one by one, in the silence of my heart. If you want to be part of this circle and receive what cannot be spoken in public, join. The portal is below. Number 2, the fire in the bones. They believed that if they silenced your mouth, the fire in you would burn out. They didn't understand that this fire was not lit by matches, but born burning. Jeremiah 20 verse 9 says, "His word is in my heart like a fire shut up in my bones." This is the flame they could not put out. Even when you walked away, even when you tried to live like everyone else, the spark pressed against your ribs, demanding to be released. It's why you've never been able to stay in spaces that dishonor your spirit. It's why certain conversations drain you, because they do not feed the fire, they try to smother it. They may have laughed at your visions, dismissed your convictions, rolled their eyes when you spoke of what you felt coming. But every act of dismissal was fuel, and now the embers are visible again. The fire in your bones is calling you forward, and you can no longer pretend you don't feel the heat. Comment "fire" if you know that something inside you has never gone cold, because this flame is about to illuminate signals that they won't be able to unsee. It began as a whisper beneath the noise of ordinary days, a tension you could not name but could not ignore. At first, it felt like the faint hum of an unseen machine, something operating just beyond the edges of your awareness. You noticed how certain rooms seemed to press in on you, how certain moments left a residue on your spirit long after they had passed. People spoke in ways that sounded kind but left you feeling smaller, less certain of yourself. There was a pattern in the way opportunities slipped away at the last moment, as though an invisible hand had brushed them aside. It was subtle enough to doubt, but constant enough to keep you awake at night. Somewhere deep down, you knew this was not chance. The weight of it settled into your chest like a slow-moving storm, heavy and charged with unspent lightning. You felt misunderstood when you tried to explain your vision, as though you were speaking a language no one else cared to learn. Every dismissal, every condescending smile, every sideways glance etched itself into your memory. Shame became a quiet companion, whispering that you were too much, too intense, too unwilling to fit in. The more you tried to soften yourself for others, the more you felt like you were disappearing. There were days you looked in the mirror and barely recognized the reflection staring back. And yet, a flicker remained behind your eyes, refusing to be extinguished. Looking back now, you see that this pressure had a design. It was not random cruelty, but a response to the potential you carried without realizing it. Like Joseph thrown into the pit by his brothers in Genesis 37, your fall was not a sign of failure, but the first step toward a greater unveiling. The resistance was calibrated to your strength, not your weakness. Systems, unspoken rules, and guarded hearts moved against you because they sensed what would happen if you stood in your full light. The wilderness you walked was not an exile, it was a proving ground. What felt like suppression was in truth the shaping of a weapon heaven intended to wield. When you retrace the path, the patterns sharpen into focus. Certain faces reappear across the years, each carrying a similar tone, the same subtle attempt to reduce your vision. Opportunities dangled and then dissolved. Promises made and then withdrawn. The environments that drained you all carried a shared undertone, a quiet intolerance for the truth you carried. You see now that these were not coincidences but mile markers, showing you where the fire in you was most feared. And with that clarity comes a strange relief, as though someone has turned on a light in a long darkened room. The more you see, the more you feel the resistance take shape. It is like walking into air that has grown suddenly heavy, thick with an unspoken warning. Conversations twist without cause, doors close without explanation. People avert their eyes when your truth rises to the surface. It is as though the moment you step into alignment, a fog tries to wrap around you, dulling the edges of your voice. You are not imagining it. Light has always attracted distortion. Yet even the fog cannot erase the steady glow that burns at your core. In fact, the more it tries, the more defined that glow becomes. You remember the ways you responded, some fierce, some quiet. There were times you shrank yourself to avoid the sting of judgment. Times you tried to play along, wearing the mask they preferred, hoping the weight would lift if you just blended in. Other times you rebelled silently, withdrawing into your own inner sanctuary where their reach could not follow. You learned the cost of standing out and the ache of hiding too long. Fear tried to convince you that invisibility was safety, but your spirit knew otherwise. Each choice to silence yourself left the fire in your bones pressing harder against the walls of your being. And now something has shifted. You begin to understand that the resistance itself was proof of your significance. They did not push against you because you were empty. They pushed because you carried something they could not contain. The flame that has lived inside you since before you can remember is not asking for permission anymore. You are reclaiming your voice, not as a tool of rebellion, but as a declaration of truth. Every dismissal has become fuel, every closed door a spark. The fire in your bones is not a threat to you. It is the very force that will lead you forward. You were never meant to be invisible, chosen one. The reason you were opposed is the same reason you are now rising, because you carry a light that cannot be replicated. The more they tried to smother you, the more the flame learned to burn in ways they could not see or touch. Comment fire if you feel it even now, pressing against your ribs, demanding to live. This is not the end of your resistance. It is the beginning of your release. And in the next step, you will see that the fire was not only for survival, it was for illumination. What it will reveal next is something even they won't be able to deny. Every word, every image you receive here is an offering. If you feel this word has touched you today, you can honor it with a sign, right here below with a donation through the Super Thanks button. It is a small gesture, but it opens great doors. Number 3, the signals in the air. They told you to stop overthinking, to ignore the strange alignments, the recurring numbers, the dreams that woke you in the night. They said it was coincidence, but your spirit knows better. Heaven speaks in a code the world refuses to study. Acts 2 verse 17 says that in the last days, God will pour out his Spirit. Your sons and daughters will prophesy. Your young will see visions. Your old will dream dreams. These signals are not distractions. They are confirmations. Maybe it's the same phrase appearing in different mouths. Maybe it's a door you thought closed suddenly creaking open again. Maybe it's a stranger saying something they could not have known. Each one is a thread pulling you toward the place they hoped you'd never find. Comment signals if you've been seeing the code, and share one you've received recently. Because the next step is no longer about seeing the signs. It's about walking as one who already knows where they lead. It began with a moment so small you almost missed it. A conversation that suddenly felt like an echo from somewhere else. A word you had heard before now carried a weight it never had, as though it had been waiting for the right day to speak. The pattern was subtle but undeniable, weaving itself through your hours like a golden thread. It wasn't imagination, and it wasn't random. Something was placing these moments in your path with precision. The fog you once walked through seemed to thin, revealing outlines you didn't know were there. Colors felt sharper, pauses in speech became louder, and the air itself seemed to hum with quiet intent. The shift had begun, and you could not unsee it. You started to notice that reality spoke a secret dialect to those willing to listen. Numbers repeated in ways that defied probability, forming sequences you could feel in your bones. Dreams carried fragments of places you'd never visited yet somehow remembered. Sentences overheard in passing felt like messages written for your ears alone. Geometry appeared in unexpected places, symbols in shadows, movements in clouds. It was as though the world had always been covered in scripture, only now the ink had begun to glow. And with every sign, your understanding deepened. Inside you, something was sharpening. Your intuition no longer whispered. It spoke in a clear, unwavering tone. You found yourself walking away from places without knowing why, only to learn later they were charged with a heaviness you did not need to carry. The emotions of others clung to you like weather, and you learned to recognize the forecast before the storm arrived. Conversations that once drained you now triggered an almost immediate recoil, as though your soul was reclaiming its right to choose its company. You could feel your boundaries hardening into sacred gates, each one guarded by the quiet certainty of your worth. This was not a theory, it was happening in real time. And deep down, you knew it was preparation. The outer world began to bend in response to the new lens through which you viewed it. People who once seemed close began to drift away without confrontation, as if carried by tides you could not see. Doors you thought were bolted shut swung open on their own. Resistance appeared in strange places, but so did opportunity, each one equally revealing where you were meant to go. Your surroundings rearranged themselves like pieces of a puzzle finally finding their place. Even delays became messages, shaping your timing with uncanny accuracy. It was no longer possible to separate your inner world from the events unfolding around you. Everything was speaking, and you were finally fluent. And then came the remembering. Not learning, not discovering, remembering. You realized you had walked this path before, maybe in another lifetime, maybe in the dreams you'd carried since childhood. Fragments of old visions returned, the ones you once dismissed as imagination. A phrase you'd written years ago suddenly explained your current season. It was as if an ancient scroll inside you had begun to unroll, revealing the language you were born knowing. The familiarity was not comfort, it was calling. You began to see that your future was not something being built. It was something being restored. Every step forward felt like reclaiming a throne you had once left behind. You stopped asking for permission because you understood that destiny was not subject to approval. The road ahead was lit not by hope but by memory. Prophetic visions no longer felt like possibilities. They felt like appointments you had already agreed to keep. The questions that once kept you up at night now gave way to declarations. And with each one, the ground beneath you felt steadier. The resistance you once feared now looked different in the light of revelation. You understood that every closed door had been a seal on a treasure not meant to be opened too soon. You saw that the fire in your bones and the signals in the air were chapters of the same book. You were not being kept out, you were being kept for. The same patterns that once exhausted you now served as evidence that you were exactly where you were meant to be. Your voice began to return, not hesitant, but ringing with quiet authority. It was the sound of ownership, of taking back what had always been yours. Revelation, you now understand, is never the final step. It is the first door into a wider room. The truth had been waiting patiently for you to see it, to hold it, to live it. And now that your eyes are open, there is no going back to the old way of moving through the world. Comment signals if you know this awakening has begun in you, and share one that has marked you recently. A dream, a memory, a phrase that refuses to leave. Let the others see they are not alone in what they've been sensing. Because the next movement is not just about recognizing the signs. It's about stepping into the place they've been leading you all along. And when you do, you will find that the path ahead is already lit. Number 4, walking as one who remembers. They expected you to emerge uncertain, to stumble as if this calling were new. But when heaven unveils you, you move like one returning home. Because this path is not being introduced to you, it's being reintroduced. Isaiah 46 verse 10 says God declares the end from the beginning. That means you are not walking into something unfamiliar, but into something your soul has known since before your first breath. That's why your steps feel guided now, why conversations feel divinely placed, why doors open without knocking. They'll ask how you learned so quickly. They'll assume you've been trained in secret. They won't understand that the secret was always in your bones. Comment remember if you felt the sense that you are not learning, but recalling. Because now we expand into what this fire, this path, and this remembrance truly mean for your future. It begins not with a sudden flash, but with the quiet return of a sound you have always known. It moves through you like the echo of a voice carried across centuries, one that does not teach but reminds. The air feels older, as if the room itself has been waiting for you to arrive. You catch glimpses in the periphery, a symbol on a page, a phrase in a stranger's mouth, each one unlocking something you thought you had lost. It is the sensation of a sacred scroll being unsealed within your chest, revealing lines you never learned but somehow know. This is not invention. It is retrieval, the gathering of fragments scattered before you ever came here. And as you hear it, you realize the whisper has been speaking all your life. There is a name that was placed upon you before your first breath, one the world has never called you by. It has lived hidden in the marrow, waiting for the moment your ears could bear its sound. In the noise of the world, you forgot it, and yet it sang quietly under every season of your life. This is why you never truly fit into the molds offered to you. They were crafted for lesser stories. You were the sealed scroll, the one kept for an appointed time. Like the prodigal returning, you are not becoming someone new, you are stepping back into someone ancient. And the moment you remember this name, the ground beneath you changes. You have always carried the cloak, though you did not always see it. It was woven from light the world could not counterfeit, lined with a mark that only the awakened can recognize. Those who meet your eyes feel the weight of something they cannot name, yet they react as if they have touched fire. It is the resonance of your true self, a vibration that bypasses explanation. Words are not needed when presence already speaks. You are recognized not by appearance, but by signature, the spiritual frequency etched into your being. And in the eyes of those who carry the same mark, you are already known. The truth is, you signed this mission long before your body took shape. Somewhere between the stars and the dust, you agreed to return at a time when light would be costly and truth would be rare. Every delay in your life was not punishment, but calibration. The clock of heaven aligning your release. Your trials were not detours. They were training grounds, burning away what could not walk into this chapter. You carry an assignment written on a scroll that has never left the hand of the one who sent you. Even the stars know your timing, holding their places like sentinels until you arrived. This is not chance. It is covenant. And those who crossed your path felt it, whether they loved you for it or hated you because of it. Your presence has always been a mirror, showing people not who you are, but who they are when they stand near truth. Some ran toward it, desperate for the light they saw in your reflection. Others recoiled, unable to bear the exposure of shadows they wished to keep hidden. You were a revealer without trying, a catalyst without planning. Their reactions were never about your worth, but about what your presence unlocked. You have always been more than the role they assigned to you. Now you see, it is not just your story unfolding. It is the turning of an ancient cycle. Archetypes long dormant are waking. The seer who names what others deny. The guardian who keeps the gates. The rebel who breaks the chains. The healer who walks into ruins to call life out of stone. You are not an isolated figure wandering in mystery. You are part of a procession that began before time was measured. Every vision you've carried belongs to a tapestry being woven across generations. Your rise is the echo of prophecies that were spoken before you were conceived. And in your awakening, you join a chorus that has been singing without pause. The bloodline of light within you stirs, answering a summons you cannot refuse. It is not poetic, it is literal, written into the unseen code of your spirit. Your DNA hums with angelic memory, with prophetic instructions carried through the ages. You are the one sent to reverse what was lost, to uproot the curse and plant the blessing in its place. Every ancestor who longed for freedom leans forward now, watching through the veil. The chains they could not break are breaking in your hands, and the mantle they could not carry rests easily on your shoulders. You did not just awaken, you returned. Every step you take now is a reunion with a path that has been calling you home since the beginning. Time collapses, and you see that all your life was an answer to a question you had forgotten. Comment "remember" if you feel this stirring in your bones, and share one moment where the past felt like it was speaking directly to you. Let others in this circle see that they are not alone in their return. Because the fire you now carry is not the start of your journey. It is the continuation of something the world has been waiting to see reignited. And what comes next will not just change your life. It will shift the story for all who carry the same light. This is not just about personal calling, it's about a divine return. The silence was the forge. The fire in your bones never went out. The signals in the air were the map, and walking as one who remembers is your arrival. Every attack, delay, and dismissal they sent your way only ensured you would walk into this moment unshakable. They will see you step into places they swore you'd never reach, and they'll know the years they thought were wasted were in fact years you were being armed. There are seasons where silence becomes a sanctuary, though at the time it feels like exile. You remember the long nights when heaven seemed distant, yet something beneath your skin kept burning. That was the forge, unseen by the world but felt in the marrow, shaping you for a task that could not be rushed. In those hidden places, God was not absent. He was crafting your endurance in the language of delay. You learned to live on whispers, to navigate by signs the untrained eye could not see. Even in the stillness, your spirit kept a rhythm with eternity, as if walking to a drumbeat no one else could hear. And though you thought you were waiting, you were actually becoming. One day, without warning, the fire within you revealed it had never gone out. It was not a spark to be rekindled, but a steady flame that had endured through every storm. That fire was prophecy in your bones, carrying the memory of your mission even when your mind forgot. You felt it surge in moments when others dismissed you, as if heaven was reminding you, "I never left you." The world mistook your patience for passivity, but your stillness was not surrender, it was preparation. Now, as you step forward, that fire has become the light that marks your return. And nothing around you can dim what was ignited within you before time began. The signals were always there, though they were disguised as coincidences, encounters, and dreams you could not explain. You would overhear words meant only for you, find scriptures that seemed to leap off the page, or cross paths with strangers who spoke like messengers. These were not accidents. They were the coordinates of your return, written in the air for your spirit to decode. Chosen one, your bones still remember the fire because it was placed there by the one who knew you before you were formed. The season of concealment is ending, and heaven is calling you into the light they feared you'd reach. Subscribe if you haven't yet, like this video, and comment "I am chosen" to let this message anchor in your soul. This message may not stay online forever. Download your copy and transcript in the vault, ideal for journaling, inner rituals, and sacred study. The link is in the description below. Please share it with someone who needs to hear this. For full prophetic revelations daily, join the membership via the link in the description. Your spiritual path deserves more than fragments. Step into the full light. And if this message moved you deeply, consider tapping the Super Thanks button to support the mission. Every Super Thanks fuels the light we're spreading together. Your fire was never meant to be hidden. It was meant to be seen and feared by those who tried to stop you.